Welcome back to PCW's WWE Raw review. Stay tuned for news on why Randy Orton is now in a tag team, plans for WrestleMania Backlash changing, and plans for Charlotte Flair going forwards. Raw this week featured a number of significant steps forward in storylines, but at the same time couldn't quite get away from the repetition that has been key the past few weeks. This was a very up and down Raw, and we're going to break it down for you. I'm PCW's Tom Colohue. Be sure to hit like on this video before we start and remember to subscribe if you haven't. Raw followed SmackDown's lead this week in completely ignoring the previous system of having a 20-minute promo package open every single Raw. There were promos, but brief ones. Retribution were made to look like Ascension, and Braun Strowman and Drew McIntyre had a bit of play-by-play and banter between them that actually showed some personality. Rare for Braun Strowman and a sign of things to come. While these are positives, the ensuing match is basically just a reverse of what happened last week. This time Braun Strowman had the handicap match and won via DQ, then he was saved by Drew McIntyre, and eventually they both lost because of countout when Drew McIntyre accidentally hit Braun Strowman. It was a tiny baby step that felt incredibly repetitive by the end. So really it is very much Raw taking one big step forward and then several small steps back. Backstage, separately, Drew and Braun both went up to Adam Pearce, Drew demanding a match with Braun Strowman for our main event, and then Braun demanding that if he won, he should be added to the main event of WrestleMania Backlash, which will be the WWE Championship match. In a segment that was clearly aimed at children, The Miz, John Morrison, Elias and Jackson Ryker sung a terrible harmony of Hey Hey Hop Hop before Damian Priest and The New Day pelted them with rotten tomatoes. There were a lot of internet review jokes that I could have done without. I didn't enjoy this, but to be fair, I'm far from the target audience of this sort of segment. Raw really is quite branching in the target audience it goes for. The first hour is more aimed at the younger viewers and the last hour is aimed at more the older viewers, hence why Alexa Bliss and The Fiend tend to turn up late on. The ensuing six-man tag match got plenty of time, but really it just sort of happened. This is a case, and you see it later on, of two storylines being crammed together because they didn't have enough time to play them out separately. They got plenty of time in the match. It was a good match, but not one that really created any new stars or really actually added anything to ongoing storylines. The second hour draw segment, as always, featured Charlotte Flair, but it also featured Sonya Deville letting her in through the back door. Now, this looks like a hell of a power couple and a long-term combination I'd very much enjoy seeing with Sonya Deville and Charlotte Flair. This essentially was to clear up the suspension that Charlotte Flair suffered last week. Sonya Deville went behind Adam Pearce's back to get Charlotte back in after an apology from the referee and an apology from Charlotte. This would play into things later on, but it looks like Sonya Deville's alliances are starting to become a little more clear. Sheamus once again talked open challenge and once again encountered Humberto Carrillo. This time, after taking a beating, Humberto Carrillo fought back and got a little bit of vengeance. I still expect this is building towards a match, and I don't think it's going to make it to the pay-per-view. Lashley and MVP cut a promo in the middle of the ring. This didn't really advance anything, but it did hit and reiterate on all the key points of this feud going forwards. These are the things that make Lashley look like a star, and it's very similar to Attitude Era when in the middle of the show Steve Austin would always cut a promo. It'd be 10-15 minutes and then he'd just go back to the back. But really it's a recap without showing a recap and a reiteration of everything that came before. It does help feuds every now and then to remind people of what has happened, so this did the job for me. Kevin Patrick tried to interview Matt Riddle, who rode in circles around him on a scooter. He eventually stopped when Randy Orton appeared and said, "Hey, this RK Bro tag team, let's do that." This was a shock to me, but not too big a shock. It's very clear at this point that Randy Orton and Matt Riddle are in a long-term program, and it looks like this tag team in future years may be looked at similarly to how Rated RKO got started. It's certainly a similar naming convention and a similarly odd couple. WWE Raw at the moment is rebuilding its tag division after a very successful rebuild over on SmackDown. This is why we're seeing lots more tag matches, six-man tag matches, six-woman tag matches, and so on and so forth. There is a lot more focus on tag team wrestling right now, and Randy Orton does want to put over new up-and-coming talent. Randy Orton wanted to work with Matt Riddle, and so he's been given the opportunity right here and right now, similarly to how Hardcore Holly worked to put over Cody Rhodes back in the day. There's a reference for you. Essentially, those two have become the jobbers of the tag division, very unfortunately, but we are where we are. It was a convincing win that Matt Riddle eventually claimed after essentially demanding a tag from Randy Orton. Randy Orton getting soft in his old age. Angel Garza flirted with Nia Jax backstage, who was made so happy with this that the flowers that he gave her were used to beat Mandy Rose over the head. Do you remember when Enzo was in love with Nia Jax? Some things never change. This led to our third hour draw segment, Asuka teaming with Naomi and Lana against Shayna Baszler, Nia Jax and Rhea Ripley. Firstly, Shayna Baszler and Rhea Ripley should never be on the same team, despite the fact that they were clearly close friends, and showed that during the match with fist bumps, with chatting. Really, Shayna Baszler and Rhea Ripley looked like the tag team here, and Nia Jax looked like the outsider. Rhea Ripley won the match here with the Riptide on Lana, however didn't get the pin. She tagged out to Nia Jax for no reason, who got the pin via a leg drop. Because, you know, you gotta keep Nia looking strong. Alexa Bliss gave us a jump scare with a doll. Yay. She then announced that she will be returning to the women's division soon. I believe we're going to see Asuka versus Bliss again very shortly, and that may give Asuka what she needs to get the time off that she's looking for. Charlotte Flair beat up Mandy Rose. Not much of an opportunity there. Finally, in our first time ever main event, Drew McIntyre and Braun Strowman went the distance. This was an incredibly even match, and this is where Braun Strowman is at his best. I know he's always booked as a dominant monster, but if you think back, for example, to the feud with Roman Reigns, when they were presented as equals, that for me was the highlight, the pinnacle of Braun Strowman's career, and really he worked extremely well with Drew McIntyre here, both men selling for the other. Now, Lashley and MVP were at ringside trying to ensure that Drew McIntyre won, so that Braun Strowman would not be involved in a triple threat at WrestleMania Backlash. However, even though they interfered on Drew's behalf, Retribution also tried to interfere, and that ended up working out for Braun Strowman, who got the win after a power slam 1-2-3. This means that our WrestleMania Backlash main event is going to be Bobby Lashley defending the WWE Championship against Drew McIntyre and Braun Strowman. And I'm a little bit more excited about this than I was about the one-on-one match at WrestleMania, even though that also was a very, very good match. I'm excited to see this because it's new, because it's different. And I feel these three, the land of the giants as it were over on Raw, can really make magic happen together. Raw was a solid show this week. It made significant improvements to last week, but did suffer because of the usual recaps, constant commercial breaks removing a lot of the atmosphere because they kept happening during matches, and some repetition in storylines. Certain stars were not featured, again AJ Styles and Omos. This time the Viking Raiders also not featured, and they've been a highlight over the last 2 weeks. While a number of storylines were simply smushed together in the hope that something came out of it, the matches at least got long enough, and there was significant storyline progression for a number of key angles, such as what's happening with Charlotte Flair, what's happening with the WWE Championship, and so on. I think this was an okay Raw, verging on good. Wouldn't watch it again, but wasn't bored during the entire 3-hour stretch. Let me know what you thought of Raw down in the comments. I've been Tom Colohue here for PCW, and we will see you next time.